SLT Mobitel Home Broadband සමගින් non-stop ගමනකට data බෝවන්. SLT Mobitel Home Broadband සමගින් non-stop ගමනකට data බෝවන්.
දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයුෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වළකයි.
Tonight, more assistance. US Ambassador Julie Chung announces $65 million in further assistance through USAID. Contraction. Sri Lanka's economy shrinks by 8.4% in the second quarter of this year. Easter tax suspect. Summons issued on former President Maithripala by Fort Magistrate Court over failure to prevent 2019 massacre. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Friday, the 16th of September 2022.
විම්දියර මිලිලීටර් 100 ස්මාර්ට් පැක් එක රුපියල් 85ට දැන් වෙළඳ පොලේ.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. I'm Andrew Bernard. Now in your top story for tonight, President Ranil Wickremesinghe announced that swift measures will be taken to revive the free trade agreement with India and upgrade it to a comprehensive economic and technological partnership. The President further emphasized that measures will be taken to ensure that renewable energy available in the northern province will be exploited while working to connect the power grids between India and Sri Lanka, which he believes would bring about development in the northern province as never seen before. President Ranil Wickremesinghe and Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri participated in the 75th anniversary celebrations of India's independence in Colombo yesterday.
We are taking two major steps. First one is we'll upgrade the free trade agreement into a comprehensive economic and technological partnership. We started that in 2019, but I also think if Sri Lanka wants to develop its international trade, we have to think differently. So I have decided to establish an international trade office which will deal with all the international trade negotiations. As I spoke with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, first under the Ministry of Finance to set it up, and when it's restructured, we will go in the future to Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade. So this is the first step. That will pave the way. It also means that we have to remove the red tape. We are looking at restructuring our institutions, of having separate ministry which will deal with ease of doing business, competitiveness, at the same time to look forward to the different trade agreements that we will come to. So there is a scope for Sri Lanka and India to get together and look at the different areas. For instance, logistics, renewable energy, tourism, trade, IT. There are many areas which we can work together. And we should work together for the benefit of our two countries. Secondly, we are looking at all the projects which India and Sri Lanka had agreed to, but unfortunately it had got delayed at the Sri Lankan end. But amongst this comes that we have our agreement on the Indian rupee being used here, which finally will enable Indian tourists to come in here and help tourism. But of the projects, one is the long-term energy solution, the power grid connection between India and Sri Lanka, offshore wind energy, solar power plant at Sampur, and the renewable energy projects on 3 islands of Jaffna. We have a tremendous scope, a potential renewable energy, and India has stepped in first. There will be others, but what from Putlam to Mullatif, if you exploit the renewable energy and go in for green hydrogen and also providing power to India, you will see the upliftment of the northern economy, which has not happened earlier. Then we come to promoting Indian higher educational institutes to come into Sri Lanka. Especially Jaffna is one area we have identified. Again, another development. And we have the Trincomalee tank farm development, the development of the upper tank farm, the development of the Trincomalee port, and the investment zones, which we are working out. Fortunately, Subhana Jurong has given us a plan for the layout of the Trincomalee areas. So this gives big potential. The potential is such that you will find, as far as North is concerned, on its western side will be renewable energy and its eastern side a port. So that will contribute to the development of the north.
Now, Sri Lanka's economy contracted by 8.4% in April to June quarter, with agriculture shrinking by 8.4%, industries by 10% and services 2.2% compared to a year ago. The Census and Statistics Department data showed that the first output narrowed to 4.8%. The last worst GDP reading came in the second quarter in 2020, when the economy shrank by 14.8% when COVID-related restrictions choked the economy. According to data from the Department of Census and Statistics, Sri Lanka's economy contracted by 8.4% in the April to June quarter compared to the same period a year ago, amid concerns over the country's ongoing financial situation. The gross domestic product for the second quarter of this year at constant price declined up to 2.7 trillion rupees from 3.3 trillion rupees in the second quarter of last year. During the 3 months to June, all three major economic activities of agriculture, industrial and services have recorded negative growth rates. Agricultural activities contracted by 8.4% when compared to the 11.2% of positive growth recorded in the same quarter of 2021. This was mainly driven by negative growth in cultivation of cereal, tea and paddy. Although the overall manufacturing industry contracted by 5.3% during the quarter under review, one of the major manufacturing industries, textiles, wearing apparel and leather-related products, reported an expansion of 28.2% when compared with the same quarter of last year. However, overall industrial activity shrank 10% compared to the high growth of 21.6% reported in the same quarter in the previous year. This was mainly due to the negative growth in the manufacture of coke and refined petroleum production, manufacture of wood and wood products, and in the manufacture of basic metal and fabricated metal products. Performance of the service sector too shrank by 2.2% during April to June when compared to the same quarter of the year 2021. Financial service activities and insurance services reported a shortfall by 19.5% and 16.8% respectively. In addition, professional services, programming and broadcasting activities and human health services fell short in comparison as well. Now, with the opening of the Lotus Tower for public viewing for the first time yesterday, it has generated over 2 million rupees in income in just one day. According to the management company Lotus Tower Private Limited, over 2,600 locals and 20 foreigners visited the premises just yesterday. The Colombo Lotus Tower, the tallest structure in South Asia located at the epicenter of the commercial capital, was declared open to the public yesterday from 2 p.m. Since the Lotus Tower was declared open to the public, many people continued to make their way to enjoy the exceptional panoramic views over the Colombo city. The Lotus Tower was lit up in a multitude of colors to all making their way to and from Colombo. Yesterday, 2,612 locals and 21 foreigners had purchased entry tickets to the Lotus Tower between 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. Accordingly, Lotus Tower Private Limited stated that on the first day alone, earnings from ticket sales and stalls exceeded 2.1 million rupees. The general public can visit the Lotus Tower from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. today. On weekends, the Lotus Tower will be accessible to the general public from 12 noon until 12 midnight. Now, Ambassador of the United States to Sri Lanka, Julie Chung, announced today that the country will be provided with another $65 million through the United States Agency for International Development. This financial assistance will be provided to the country over a period of 5 years. This comes in addition to $60 million extended to the country during USAID Administrator Samantha Power's visit to Sri Lanka. US Ambassador to Sri Lanka Julie Chung announced today that the United States will provide an additional estimated $65 million in assistance to Sri Lanka through US aid over a 5-year period. The assistance falls under the Development Objectives Assistance Agreement signed by Mission Director for USAID Sri Lanka and Maldives, Gabriel Grau, and the Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, Economic Stabilization and National Policies, Mahinda Sairavardhana. The US Embassy said in a statement that the funding is in addition to over $60 million of new humanitarian and fertilizer assistance that USAID Administrative Power announced last week in response to the current economic and political crises in the country. In celebration of the start of this new bilateral agreement, Ambassador Julie Chung remarked that the US remains fully committed to supporting locally led initiatives to advance a stable, prosperous and peaceful Sri Lanka, critical to promote a free and open Indo-Pacific in which all nations are connected, prosperous, resilient and secure. Chung added that the US, through the US Agency for International Development, is committed to supporting Sri Lanka to advance a market-driven growth, environmental sustainability and resilience and good governance. All USAID funding for Sri Lanka is provided as gifts or grants and is implemented by local and international organizations that adhere to strict monitoring standards. The US has provided more than $2 billion in development assistance to Sri Lanka since 1956. Stay with us for more news on the other side of this short break.
කාලගුණය කොහොමුණත් රයිනෝ නං වාලට සේෆ් තමයි මුළු ගෙදරම. Rhino Cement Roofing Sheets. Then you know Rhino. I know.
Big 3.
Uber Eats මගින් ඉදිරිපත් කරන ආදරයෙන් අවශ්‍යතා ඇති අයට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය භාණ්ඩ පරිත්‍යාග කිරීමට වේදිකාවක්.
Welcome back. Now, the Colombo Fort Magistrate today issued a notice on former President Maithripala Sirisena to appear before the courts on the 14th of October after considering a private plaintiff seeking to name him as the accused in the Easter Sunday attacks for failing to prevent the attacks. Colombo Fort Magistrate Derana English issued a notice today calling on former President Maithripala Sirisena to appear before the courts on the 14th of October. The notice was issued after considering a private plaint submitted by Reverend Father Cyril Gamini and Jesudasan Nandasan, a victim of the Easter Sunday terror attack. Former President Maithripala Sirisena has been named as a suspect in the plaint filed regarding alleged negligence and failure to prevent the terrorist attacks on the 21st of April 2019. On behalf of the petitioners, President's Counsel Rienzi Arasakula Ratna presented the facts before the court. He stated that despite receiving information that a terrorist attack would be carried out on Easter Sunday, as the Defence Minister, then President Maithripala Sirisena had committed an offence under Section 298 of the Penal Code by acting negligently to prevent it. Accordingly, the President's Counsel had requested the court to name former President Maithripala Sirisena as a suspect and issue a notice to summon him before the court. Colombo Fort Magistrate Derana English, who accepted the request, named former President Maithripala Sirisena as a suspect in the case and issued a notice asking him to appear before the court on the 14th of October. Welcome back. Now, Sri Lanka's shares fell by 0.11% today, however still crossing the 10,000 points psychological benchmark. The main all-share price index edged down by 11.29 points to 10,061.9. The more liquid S&P SL20 fell 14.92 points to 3,233.51. Market generated a turnover of 4.1 billion rupees. The top losers for today were LIOC, Royal Ceramics, Lanka and Aitken Spence. Now, Asian markets sold off sharply today and Europe looked set to follow as investors braced for a hefty US rate hike next week amid growing concerns of a global recession following warnings from the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan opened today in negative territory and sold off during the day. It was last down 1.1% after US stocks ended the previous session with mild losses. Japan's Nikkei stock index slipped 1%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng index was down 1.1%. The dollar dropped 0.14% against the yen to 142.95 after being down by 0.4% earlier in the session. Market analysts and fund managers reported that Japan's threats of currency intervention might slow, not stop the yen from hurtling towards three-decade lows before the year end. China's yuan weakened past the psychologically important 7 per US dollar level for the first time in 2 years. The IMF warned yesterday that the global economic outlook remains downbeat and some countries are expected to slip into recession in 2023, but it is too early to say if there will be a widespread global recession. The world's largest three economies, the United States, China, and the Eurozone, have been slowing sharply, and the IMF further said that even a moderate hit to the global economy over the next year could tip it into recession. And that's all the news we have for you this evening. Join us again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.